Man, it is good to hear that tune again. That 5 to 7 seconds that we haven't heard in almost a year. Welcome into the Tailgate, guys, brought to you by campus2canton.com. I am your host, Austin Nace, along with a cohort of my friends here from Campus to Canton. Chris Moxley here beside me. We've got Jared Palmgren, our CFF guru. We've got Matt Bruning, the guy who works everything behind the scenes, and Colin Decker, who's just a pretty face here, folks. That is what he is here for this morning.
Glad I can bring something to the table.
Week 0 of college football, guys. It's not a full slate, but do we care? We don't. We don't care at all, because that means that we, for the next 4 months, can wake up every Saturday morning and know that we've got something good on our TVs. Guys, this is the Tailgate for people that haven't watched it before. Most of you are returning faces. Jared, you are the fresh young face here on the show. We do this every weekend, guys, every Saturday morning, usually going to start at 10 a.m. Eastern time. We're getting started a little later today because of the abbreviated slate. And we're just here to talk college football with you guys. The first hour, we're going to talk generally some start sits for your fantasy teams. We're going to talk some prize picks, props that we're betting that day, some storylines maybe that we're watching, some generally, some matchups 1v1 different places, and other stuff. Second hour is going to be DFS. It's going to be betting. And then injury news as it kind of creeps in on the lead up to everything kicking off. So that's enough from me here. I just talked for a while there. Wow. Let's not do that again. Let's kick things off here, guys, with some storylines that we're watching for the 2022 season. Chris, teams that are back, maybe? Question mark?
Yeah, it's funny, right? Like every offseason, we have the question of, is Texas back? Is whoever back? Generally, it's Texas because they're really easy to pick on. But I think these 3 teams might be back. Miami, University of Southern California, and Texas. They have made investments in their coaching staff, in their resources that have been demonstrably different than anything that we've seen. The hiring of Lincoln Riley, everything that's come along with that, bringing Caleb Williams, bringing Mario Williams, bringing that entire group from Oklahoma over, I think that's really good news for USC. Miami, they have been very frugal in the last 20 years. Let's put it that way. They've made some poor coaching hires. They've rushed some hires out the door. They have not invested in their resources. They're doing that now, big time. And that's really the difference between Miami not being competitive and Miami being one of the best teams in the country. They have the resources if they want to invest them, and I think now they're doing it. Texas has Sark, and Texas has Quinn Ewers, and Texas has Arch Manning coming in. They also have some of the best offensive line classes of the last 2 or 3 years, and the upcoming one is just as good. I think Texas might be back. I don't know if they're going to be back totally this year, but I think their program moving in the right direction. So all these teams that we joke about being back for the last 2, 3 feels like decades, years at a time, I think they might be back. And I say it quietly, but I mean, I think that might be true.
Which one is most back this year, Chris? Which one of those 3 ends up with the best record in 2022?
USC probably because they play in the Pac-12. I think Miami's probably second because they play in the ACC. Texas has kind of I just don't think Texas is quite there yet. They have really good offensive linemen who are young, but I think it's going to be USC.
All right. Well, mark that down, folks. We'll check back in on that prediction here in 12 weeks. Because if we can't hold each other accountable, then what are we here for? Jared, good morning. Thank you for agreeing to join us here this season. Host of Chasing the Natty and head of our CFF team here. Georgia, will they repeat? Can they repeat? Should they repeat? Jared, you're muted, by the way.
All right. Can they repeat? Yes. Will they repeat? Obviously, completely to be seen. I do think they still have the talent they need to. Obviously, lost a ton to the NFL, but if there is a program out there that is recruiting, especially on the defensive side of the ball, where they lost the most of the NFL, I think Georgia will be just fine over there. Again, I would love to see them repeat. It would be very nice. It would be very nice to get rid of all the jokes now that says we won't win one for another 40 years. But even still, for real, in terms of what I'm actually looking forward to this season and everything, CFF is great. This is probably the offseason I have seen the most time and effort I've seen people put into analyzing these rosters, trying to find every little nugget that we can, every little possible breakout player that there could be. I'm excited to see who still slips through the cracks here. There are going to be players that we did not talk about at all this offseason that are somehow going to end up as a top 10 option at any of the positions. And I'm excited to see it. That's part of what makes CFF fun. So that's my whole deal.
Yeah, it really seems like more and more people are talking about college football and college football fantasy. That is a great thing for all of us that love it. Let's get this thing more mainstream. Matt, how are you doing this morning? And you've been working hard already. Yeah.
It's the hour. I'm gonna have to learn that I can't do what I did today. I very much procrastinated this morning. I was like, oh, we're not going live until 10 a.m. my time, so I got plenty of time to get stuff done behind the scenes. And I went and got donuts, and then all of a sudden it's 9:30, and then it's 9:40, and we're trying to hurry up and get stuff done. But I'm great. So just to echo off some of what Chris said, I know he talked about Texas, and I feel like I've been all in on this Texas bandwagon with the Quinn Ewers stuff. For me, it's Quinn Ewers, and can he just lead Texas to a winning season and take them bowling? Like, I think that would be a massive thing, not just for Texas, but for college football. It is good for college football when these blue bloods like Texas, and as he mentioned, Miami and USC, if they can all get back to prominence and be talented, good football teams in the college football landscape, I think it's only good. Also, just being honest, it would be 100% great thing for me with Quinn Ewers going out there and looking good, because Felix is just going to be taking L after L every devy debate and College Fantasy Tonight show on Saturday. So it's going to be a lot of fun, but I'm just excited to see what he's able to do. Again, he's been highly touted since a junior in high school, and we realistically haven't seen him on the field to do anything for over 2 years now. So it's just going to be fun next week to actually see him get on the field and what he can do.
I know you were conflicted. Obviously, he was with your Ohio State Buckeyes. For any first-time listeners, Matt, as you'll find out quickly, unabashed, just a homer on Ohio State.
No, sir. I'm a homer of college football. That's it. I have no affiliate.
Whose jerseys are back? Yeah.
Oh, they're just, I don't know. I don't even know who this Fields guy is. It was just sent to me by a friend. I don't know.
Yeah, by the way, it's the college football, I think.
Yeah, it's the college football. Yeah, it's actually, the college football Fields. That's what this is. They're number one in our hearts.
There we go. Is part of you sad that Ewers won't ever end up becoming that guy at Ohio State?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I would have loved to see him. And also with Ryan Day, not that Sarkisian is we've seen how well he's been able to develop quarterbacks. So I really like that he ended up going there and not some of the other destinations that were rumored at Texas A&M. Although I actually might not have minded him at Texas Tech with Kitley. I am a little bit sad because it would have been great to have possibly an Ewers jersey up behind me one day in that beautiful scarlet and gray. But there's also the other side of it. If he was there, Kyle McCord maybe never starts for the Buckeyes, and I'm very much been on that train for a long time. So got to keep that train moving. So I'm glad that he went somewhere like Texas. It's going to be fun to watch. The
lore behind Matt and Felix and their arguments over these topics over the past few years is basically like the Game of Thrones lore. Like there's a few books we can get you guys if you're a little lost on what Matt is talking about in terms of his longtime feud with fellow Campus to Canton member here, Felix Sharp, and their arguments about that. Colin, let's come over to you. You did your job so far, looking pretty, as we talked about earlier.
Thank you. Thank you. I do it well.
I think the biggest storyline this offseason, or I will call it the biggest. I'm just going to call it the biggest, is the transfer portal. This new transfer portal that allows players to basically enter this mythical realm, then pop out wherever they want. And with this immediate transfer waiver now, these guys can play right away. They don't have to wait anymore. That is no longer kind of the part of the calculus that these guys have to undergo. Is it worth it to go somewhere else? So we saw a lot of high profile guys transfer this year. Which ones are you watching, and what are you looking for with this newfound kind of element of college football?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, the biggest story this all offseason has been who is transferring. It felt like every day this offseason, there was a new big name in the transfer portal. I mean, we had Quinn Ewers transfer from Ohio State to Texas. Jackson Dart transferred from USC to Ole Miss. Jermaine Burton from Georgia, the national title winning team, to Alabama, the team they beat in the national title. Zach Evans from TCU to Ole Miss as well. And Jordan Addison from Pitt to USC. All of those teams I just named are all in our top 10 for all of the positions, across our rankings. Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart at quarterback. I didn't even mention Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs from Georgia Tech to running back to Alabama. Him and Zach Evans, both in our top 10 running backs. Jermaine Burton, Jordan Addison, top 10 wide receivers. We even had a top tight end in Michael Trigg transfer from USC to Ole Miss as well. So these high-end transfers are moving like we've never seen before. And it's going to be really interesting to see how many of these guys find success at the new school that maybe they didn't find or maybe weren't going to find at the previous school. I think, Matt already talked about Quinn Ewers. So the one that I'm most intrigued by is Jackson Dart. He was a lower rated recruit pretty much all the way up into his senior year. And then he kind of skyrocketed up the recruiting rankings, ended up inside the top 15 at quarterback in that recruiting class, got some time on the field at USC to replace Keaton Slovis. It was up and down. He had an injury and, now he goes over to Ole Miss, a team that just put a quarterback in the NFL in Matt Corral. Maybe not quite as high as we thought he was going to, but can Jackson Dart kind of recapture that type of a magic there? And then the other big one is Jahmyr Gibbs from Georgia Tech to Alabama. He looked great in limited work at Georgia Tech, but wasn't really able to seize the size of a workload that we kind of thought he should there. Can he do it at Alabama at a bigger school? Or is he kind of going to still be a little bit of a committee back, maybe the 1A to a 1B, but doesn't really ever get the workload that we thought he could?
It seems regardless, a lot of the issues you brought up there, Colin, it'll be illuminating for some NFL teams, I think. An NFL GM won't have to guess, can Jahmyr Gibbs do it under the bright lights? We kind of get to see that this year. Can Jermaine Burton survive on higher volume? Maybe not. We will see. So it's good for the players. It's good for probably fantasy managers. And it's good for us to talk about college football 24/7, 365. Gives us a lot more to talk about. I'm going to go the opposite side of what you just talked about real quick, Colin, is the storyline that I'm looking out for this year. And that's the guys that are coming from the G5, the group of five, the non-power conferences, up to the big boys. There are a ton of guys that did that this year. You can see on the infograph here on the screen for anybody that maybe listens to this later. Kanata Mumfield, wide receiver, went from Akron to Pitt. We had Jacob Cowing, wide receiver, went from UTEP to Arizona. We had Cameron Ward, who actually came from Incarnate Word, not an FBS program, up to Washington State, trying to pull the old Western Kentucky trick over there. It's going to be really interesting to see. We kind of saw it succeed a little bit last year with Western Kentucky. They were kind of the pioneers of this, albeit from a lower level. They went out, brought in a head coach, brought in all of his staff, brought in all of his players from his successful offense at Houston Baptist, brought them to Western Kentucky, and we saw what that did for that school, for that program, for that team last year. Bailey Zappi became a household name, 4th-round draft pick to the Patriots. Jarrett Stearns, the top fantasy option at wide receiver last year in all of college football. Just an insane year. And we've talked about, put in perspective this offseason how insane his year was. If the wide receiver one at Western Kentucky does 70% of what he did last year, he's still a top fantasy receiver this year. I mean, just absolutely crazy type of year. So can we get some repeat performances of that this year? It is asking a lot for a lot of these guys, I think, to go and make that step up, especially when you're not moving with your offensive coordinator and your head coach and your quarterback and some of these other guys. And you've got to learn all those things. And you've got to learn a new school and a new campus and all of those type of things. I just dropped my bold predictions for 2022 article yesterday, and I predicted that all of the wide receivers that are doing this year will struggle. The aforementioned Kanata Mumfield, Jacob Cowing. We also see guys like Antoine Wells Jr. He's going from James Madison to South Carolina, predicted to kind of be the guy there. But I think he disappoints relative to expectations this year. I think some, especially Chris there, our South Carolina in-house expert, expect him to lead that team. It's just a different level. And I think it's going to be more difficult than people think. I think we're making the assumption just based on that magical Western Kentucky team that anybody can do this. I'm skeptical. So I will be watching that very closely. If these guys have success, I think it opens up an even bigger wave next year. But if these guys struggle, I think you see it dial back a little bit of guys making that jump. So that is the storyline that I am watching closest here for this year. Our data guy, Jarek, is very kind. Did a little bit of a data deep dive for us here to lead off the day. Sent us in a segment. Matt, is that ready to be kicked off?
It's all ready, baby. Just let me know.
All right. Then let's bring that up, and we are going over to Jarek Backus.
When you just don't understand the numbers, it's time to dive into the classroom with a beautiful mind, Jarek Backus, and By the Numbers.
Welcome to By the Numbers, where I'll be taking an analytical approach to answering one question each week. This week's question is, who has the best shot at Day 2 Capital this year? Evan Hull, Chase Brown, or Ramon Davis? Let's compare these players to the average second and third round drafted players. The average player was a 4-star prospect drafted between his third and fourth year out of high school. He is 5'11 and a half and weighs 217 pounds. Looking at our players today, Chase Brown was a 3-star recruit and has the most experience of the group, going into his 5th year out of high school for the Fighting Illini. He's 5'11", 205 pounds going into this year. Evan Hall was also a 3-star recruit and is going into his 4th year out of high school for Northwestern. He stands at 5'11 and 210 pounds. Ramon Davis was also a 3-star recruit going into his 4th year out of high school with Vanderbilt. He's 5'9 and 210 pounds. More of the bowling ball build versus the other two. Last year was his first year with Vanderbilt after transferring from Temple, but injuries the last 2 years have derailed his seasons. The first statistic I like to look at is the rush yards over expected to determine how good of a rusher they've been. This accounts for down, distance, game situation, and opponent strength, and determines the difference between how many rush yards are expected versus how many were actually gained. Evan Hull and Chase Brown are leading this category at .74 and .57 rush yards over expected per attempt, respectively. Ramon Davis isn't a slouch, though. He's still positive at .28 rush yards over expected per attempt, which is still successful. The average for Day 2 RBs is .11. Next is explosive rush rate. Explosive rushes are rushes with a rush yard over expected greater than 10. It was found by Tej at TejFB Analytics on Twitter to be one of the most predictive metrics that carries from college to the NFL. This shows how good players are at getting those big runs. Both Hall and Brown are over the average for Day 2 RBs. They both sit at 8%, with the average being 7.11%. Davis is lagging behind here at 5%. Next I look at receiving. Hull and Brown again lead the way here. They sit at 11.4% and 12.4% target shares per PFF, respectively, for their best seasons so far, whereas Davis is again behind at 5.8%. I want to see at least 10% for a decent pass-catching pack. The last piece is looking at how they'll perform this season. We know draft capital for RBs matters more on how a player performed in their best season rather than their full college career. For this, I'll lean on our CFF experts, Chris Moxley, Jared Palmgren, and Nate Marchese. Per our CFF rankings for this season, Chase Brown is the RB 15, Evan Hull is at RB 68, and Ramon Davis is at 92. We have a clear winner here. With all the statistical data, along with how these players are expected to perform this year, I expect Chase Brown to have the best chance at Day 2 Capital, followed by Evan Hull and then Ramon Davis. Yep, that's the sound of Matt Bruning disowning me. Sorry, Matt.
Awesome. Thank you, Jarek.
That might have been the best 5 minutes I've ever spent on a Saturday morning.
If you did not if you're listening to this and you didn't watch it, the graphics were very, very funny. So thank you to Matt for putting that together. Thank you, Jarek, for the deep dive there. Jarek's going to be doing one of those every week, guys. The topic will kind of vary depending on who's playing that week. Obviously, limited topics this week because of the limited slate. But here we are. All right, so we're going to jump into some start sits here today. And Jared, you're going to kind of lead the way on this segment for us since you are the resident CFF guy. We're going to do this every week, guys. Usually a little more, a few more names to go through. And here's the deal with a lot of these. These are going to be non-obvious names. So this isn't us going to be sitting here and saying, start Travion Henderson this week. I think he's good at football. This is going to be, this offense has been sneaky good the past couple of weeks, and this defense has struggled against the run lately. Maybe you want to take a look at this running back who's only 30% rostered on Fantrax or something. That's kind of what this segment is for. Again, slimmer pickings today. But Jared, we want to toss this over to you. a couple start sit here that you think you're going to be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I guess I'll go through how I'm going to kind of view this each week. Obviously, Austin kind of talked about it already. Matchups are going to be very important, but like also Austin said, I'm going to try to go non-obvious here, and I'm going to try to keep my starts under a certain roster percentage. That way, maybe they're available there on your waiver wire. You can go pick them up that morning, plug them into a lineup that you think's a little weak for the day. And then for the sits, I'm going to try to keep them over a certain roster percentage, because then there's no point in me telling you to sit a guy that's not even rostered on most of your leagues. So for today, I have 3 starts and 2 sits here. Start, David Davis, wide receiver out of Western Kentucky. This blew my mind that he is only rostered at only 25% of college fantasy leagues this year. This is a guy that is set to take over the Mitchell Tinsley role that he had with the Western Kentucky offense last year. They're going to try to run that again. And he is actually less rostered than Jalen Hall, a guy that transferred over there from Western Kentucky, a good player in his own right. But I've heard much more about David Davis stepping up to be that guy on the outside this year. He is somebody that, first of all, if he's not on your roster already, he's available, go pick him up right now. And secondly, should have a very good day with Western Kentucky going up against Austin Peay. Second guy I have here, Justin McGriff, wide receiver out of Utah State, the only returning starting wide receiver for Utah State last year. Just an absolute monster of a man, well over 6'5". This guy, like I said, he's the only returning starter, only rostered on 16% of leagues right now. He should have a very good day, regardless of who is starting at quarterback for Utah State this today. And then I'm also going to say Chris Reynolds, quarterback out of Charlotte. That Charlotte FAU game, I think, is a very sneaky game here today. Going to be pretty high scoring from what I can tell. And Charlotte's defense is quite awful just at the end of the day, and they're going to be forced to pass to keep up with it. Chris Reynolds will absolutely be involved in that. Of course, he's a quarterback. That's an obvious statement. What am I saying? Anyway, and he's only rostered in 21% of leagues. Now, the 2 sits that I have here today. First of all is quarterback Drake May out of North Carolina. I like Drake May. I think he will be the starter going forward, and I think he will be the UNC quarterback to roster going forward. However, today I'm not taking that chance. I do believe that Mac Brown is somebody who is going to be switching in the different quarterbacks quite a bit today. They're playing Florida A&M. Why would you not? And so if you're planning on starting Drake May today, I say hold off on that. And then a running back that we just talked about, what Jarek said, Evan Hull. We do not know how this backfield at Northwestern is going to be broken down. Cam Porter returns after being injured for all last year. Cam Porter was the expected starter last year for Northwestern. I think that had to do a lot to do with Evan Hull's success last year. He comes back. I would say hold off on starting Evan Hull for this week until we figure out more about what's going to go on with that backfield.
Until we know what's going to go on with that team at all.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what Northwestern looks like this year. I mean, I don't think they're going to be good, but Nebraska should be a decent game to at least try to get an idea of what they're going to look like this year. Thank you, Jared, for tossing those names out and for digging in, because I know there weren't a lot of great picks this week. Chris, let's come over to you. You're part of our CFF group here. Who do you like this week? Who don't you like this week? Who do you medium like this week? Just give us the whole board.
All right, whole board. I like all the North Texas running backs. I think the fact that they are rolling with Austin Ani means that they are probably looking to run 60% of the time in each game script. Like, they're just going to run, and they have a good group too. They have Oscar Adaway, who I think is probably like the 1A there. Akika Ragsdale, who is also a quality back heading into his second year. The reason that I like these backs, though, is because I think the offensive line is really good. I think they are one of the better group of 5 offensive line. One of the best in the conference for sure. They returned 4 starters, and I mean, I look at this line, and I don't know how UTEP can match up with them. I think UTEP has 2 quality players, but outside of that, I mean, their front 7 isn't anything to write home about. So, I mean, I think you could get 70, 80 yards and a touchdown out of the top 2 backs, and then they have depth behind them. I think that if you have either one, you probably want to roll them out. I also like this feels kind of obvious, but I'm rolling with Mike Wright this week, the quarterback at Vanderbilt. They head to the island, and Hawaii is really bad. They return the least amount of production of any team in the FBS, and they are quite inexperienced, especially on the back end. They only returned one player in their secondary with more than 60 snaps last year. That is a very, very inexperienced group.
Is that low? Yeah.
That's pretty low. That's
okay.
like one game worth of snaps for one player. So they don't have a lot of experience on the back end. Mike Wright is more of a rusher. I don't think their front seven is anything to worry about, but I mean, I think he could tear them up in the passing game too, which I think might come in later when we talk about some prize picks. Hint, hint. I also, in the other side of that game, I think the weakest unit on Vanderbilt's defense is their secondary. They do have Jalen Mahoney, who was highlighted by Barnabas this week in his matchups column. But I like Zion Bowens this week, guys. I think Zion Bowens is a really good wide receiver. I think he's their most tenured wide receiver, and I think he's the one that they're going to target more than anyone. I'm expecting Braden Shager to be the quarterback one, and I think Bowens could have like a 30% target share. Listen, Vanderbilt is better than Hawaii, but I don't think Vanderbilt's worlds better than Hawaii. So I think that Bowens is a good enough player to match up against those corners. And I just like that matchup for Wright and Bowens a lot. I think that they could take advantage of the position groups on the other side. I am sitting the entire New Mexico State Nevada game. As I brought up Hawaii earlier, Nevada is the second worst team in returning production. They basically lost their entire team. They have Dom Peterson on the defensive line, who's their best player, and that's it. Toatawa on offense, that's it. Seriously, like I would not rush to play anybody, especially in the passing game. I don't like Nate Cox, who's their quarterback. I don't think Shane Illingworth is good. People seem to love him. We'll see. I don't know who the wide receiver one is even going to be there. I don't think there's a lot of BJ Castile is the guy who they project. I don't like it. I think you can maybe justify Toatawa, but I'm not looking to roll him out until I know more about this offense, because I don't think the offensive line is good either. New Mexico State is New Mexico State. We don't have any confidence in projecting that team currently, and they're one of the worst teams consistently in the Power Fives or the Group of Five. So I will avoid them until maybe I know a little bit more about this offense. I just don't want to touch that game really in any capacity. And I'm saying all of Nebraska's wide receivers that aren't named Trey Palmer. We just got news that Omar Manning is out or doubtful. He's not dressed today. I don't really have interest in anyone else on this team. Oliver Martin's interesting, but I'm not playing him. Thomas Vokalek, who's their tight end, seems to be getting a lot of hype. I'm not playing him. I think Trey Palmer is a clear wide receiver one here. And outside of that, I'm staying away from this passing game, despite thinking that Casey Thompson is an upgrade over Adrian Martinez.
Yeah, I think a lot of the games today, I think, there's a lot of question marks. It's actually I was hoping for maybe some more, big time team gets a blowout, little time team. So we'd have, some of those to watch too. Doesn't seem like we'll have a lot of that. Chris, I just want to ask you real quick. You were just talking about Vanderbilt and Hawaii. Do you think there's any chance Hawaii wins this game?
No.
Okay. We'll make some game picks later. I thought maybe you'd have something fun for me here.
So spread was 6.5 3 days ago, and it is currently 9.
Yeah, it's gone up.
I think a lot of the public money is coming on Vanderbilt, and I think that's right. Rightfully so. This game actually opened as Vanderbilt being a 1-point favorite a couple months ago, by the way, before the public actually really caught on. So it's been trending that way for a long time. I just don't see how Hawaii can compete with Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt has experience playing in the SEC. Like, they're not great, but they're still an experienced team.
Yeah, and they went out to Hawaii last week too. There's no jet lag or anything like that. They've been there
They've been on the island for a while.
Yeah,
I did not know that actually. That actually puts aside any doubt I might have had.
That should have been the recruiting pitch all last year for this coaching staff. We play Hawaii week 1, and we're going in on Sunday, and we play the next Saturday. That's all you need right there. Colin, you've got a name here for us as well. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not, Jared and Mox, both CFF experts, but I try.
You're the
I try and bring another name here. I am a pretty
You're
face.
the pretty face.
So I have to have something to talk about. I can't just be a pretty face, but a guy I'm starting this week and a guy that I'm looking forward to picking up on waivers. I guarantee you this guy is on your waiver wire. It's Kyle Van Leeuwen, the wide receiver for Utah State. He is currently listed at the top of the depth chart for Utah State in the slot. Now it is a 3-way or, so we'll see how exactly that breaks down. But Kyle Van Leeuwen has been the guy who's getting the most hype lately. I've seen a couple articles highlighting him this week. And Nine Davis earlier in the offseason was getting some hype. JUCO transfer Terrell Vaughn was getting a little bit of hype very early in the offseason. And I haven't really heard too much about those guys yet, but we know we want the slot wide receiver in this offense. The slot targets last year, 249. 55% of their targets went to the slot last year. Devin Tompkins was their leading slot wide receiver, saw 161 targets, 33.6%. But Brandon Bowling behind him, also slot wide receiver on the other side, because they do run a lot of 4 wide receiver sets. He got targeted very heavily too. So even if Kyle Van Leeuwen isn't the number 1 slot wide receiver, even if he's the number 2, I still think there's some fantasy viability there. But I do think he's going to end up being the number 1 slot wide receiver. I think he's going to be the guy that you're going to end up wanting. And this is an offense, like I said, that heavily targets the slot. So he's a guy that I'll be picking up starting this week.
I'm not ashamed to say I tried to do that quick math in my head when you gave us Tompkins and you gave us the total, but I couldn't remember the other numbers to figure out what Bowling's total targets were. So we'll pretend like that, like I never tried to do that. All right, guys. Barnabas Lee, our head honcho draft guy here at Campus to Canton, is doing a weekly segment, written segment for us here, just highlighting maybe some key one-on-one matchups across college football, whether that's edge offensive tackle, whether that's corner wide receiver, and so on and so forth. And he has been kind enough to give us a short segment here this morning, minute and a half, quick hitter on some matchups that he's watching here in week 0.
Hi, this is Barnabas Lee with the Marquee, where I highlight the best one-on-one matchups in college football each week. Football season is once again upon us. Can I get an amen? Week 0 isn't always the most exciting, but we get to kick off the 2022 season with a Big Ten conference matchup in Nebraska at Northwestern. With it comes a matchup between a blue-chip tackle prospect and an edge that will likely hear his name called in Kansas City come April. Peter Skoronski is the consensus OT number 1 right now, albeit in a fairly weak offensive line class. He comes into the season with an already stellar resume, having logged successful outings against Zach Harrison, George Karlaftis, and even Aiden Hutchinson. Skoronski is a smooth operator with a controlled, easy kick step and active hands. This helps make up for his T-Rex arms that may force a move to the interior of the line on Sundays. Skoronski has a real knack for walling off and trapping speed rushers upfield, but has his struggles against power rushers. On the other side of the ball, edge O'Shawn Mathis is the type of player that old school coaches would want first off the bus. At 6'5", 250, he has an NFL-ready body, but suffers from a similar evaluation to Rander Gregory, where his coaches ask him to read release most of the time, leading some to believe that he lacks burst and production. Mathis has plus hand leverage, a usable spin move, and an occasionally successful bull rush. He was adept at maintaining space with blockers in the Big 12, but Big 10 tackles won't usually let him get away with that. He needs to work on his leverage, functional strength, play rec, and awareness to raise his draft stock. I'm predicting Skoronski to be the lone advantage for Northwestern in this game. This is a defense that held Ohio State to its lowest scoring total last season, and adding Mathis is just the icing on the cake. Even if he is shut down by Skoronski, the rest of the team is more than capable of winning this game without him. If you want to hear more about matchups like this, make sure to look up the Checking the Fight card series released every Monday at campus2canton.com.
All right. Thank you, Barnabas. Again, you can find his weekly article over there. And as draft season gets closer, you'll be seeing a lot more from Barnabas. All right, guys, let's talk some prize picks here for a little bit. We love prize picks. And first, I think, we'll give a little spiel each week, but we're going to give a slightly longer version here, week 0. So we are partnered with Prize Picks, guys, here at Campus to Canton, and I'll talk about what our promo code gets you here in just a minute. Prize Picks is a player props website. It's plain as that. They have a lot more than football too. So if you are, you're deep into fantasy baseball or basketball or League of Legends or soccer, like they legitimately have 10, 15, 20 different things that go on over there at any given time. You're betting props. You're betting, this player, this running back will have over or under 50 rush yards today. They set a line for every single one of these players or quite a few of them. You go in, you pick the player, you pick the over under, and then you have to parlay it, meaning you have to combine it with at least one other player prop in order to play. So they're a little different from if you just go on like a DraftKings and you can just pick, Quinn Ewers to have over 300 yards passing today. It's a little different. You have to pick at least 2 2 to 5 props get played together. You have different ways where you can win more money if you say if I'm going to hit all of these, or if you say I can hit 3 or 4, maybe I won't hit 5. You win a little bit less, but obviously it gives you greater room for error there. And the point is basically just to go on there, play those props, and win some money, guys. I mean, that's what we're here to walk you through with. We have the Bet on C2C pod, hosted by Brandon Sanders, Chris K, Ethan Sowers, that drops every week on Wednesdays. They talk a lot of prize picks. We talk a lot about it in our Discord. We will have different articles for it throughout the year. And we are partnered with them. Like I said, our promo code C2C gets you an initial deposit match of up to $100. And then with that, you get $29.99 to spend on any membership that you want over at Campus to Canton. For those that aren't members with us now, and you're just looking for that type of content, maybe you don't play a lot of CFF, but you really like some of the player props type stuff. This season, we have a membership just for you. During the season, guys, $29.99, you get all of our betting content, all of our DFS content, and all of our prize picks content. That's usually reserved for our $7.99 a month or $79.99 per year NIL membership tier. But we are doing just in season, just from this week to the last week of the college football season. You get all that content, all of it first, before we give it out to the public. As soon as those lines drop on Mondays or Tuesdays or Wednesdays, we give you what we're playing first, so you guys have that advantage. You can go in and play it before those lines move. So go ahead again, guys. If you have not signed up for Prize Picks, promo code C2C, and that'll get you that initial deposit match up to $100 and $29.99 toward any membership at Campus to Canton. And you have to deposit to get that reward. You can't just sign up. Some states won't let you. I'm sorry if you're in one of those states. I am as well. Moving onward here, guys. Now that we've given out that information, and there will be a 20-second version of that going forward. Colin, what do you like this week on Prize Picks? What are you playing?
So there's 2 lines that have really stood out to me this week. And the first one, Mike Wright, quarterback at Vanderbilt, over 200.5 pass yards. Now, this line opened at, I believe it was like 151, 152 and a half, right around there. I absolutely loved it at that spot. It progressed up to, about 189.5 throughout the week. And then it's now sitting at 200.5. So it has been moving up. They've been catching on to the line being too low, but I still like this line. In the 4 games last year where Mike Wright attempted more than 20 passes, he threw for 191.75 pass yards. And all of those games came against SEC competition. Like Chris Moxley highlighted earlier, Hawaii is one of the worst teams, especially in returning production. This is not a good team. This is not a good defense. Mike Wright is going to be able to throw against this team. Now, the only concern I have, Vanderbilt might not have to throw, but Hawaii does have a very good offense. So if Hawaii can score points, then Vanderbilt can't just sit back and rely on the run game. So I do still like this line at 200.5. And then the other one I have is Trey Palmer, wide receiver for Nebraska, over 10.5 fantasy points. I absolutely love this one. Like Chris just said a little bit earlier, we got breaking news that Omar Manning is not dressed today. He's doubtful. Trey Palmer was pretty clearly the wide receiver 1 anyway, but this just kind of reaffirms it. I mean, 10.5 fantasy points, he can get 4 catches for 66 yards and he gets it. If he gets in the end zone, he's going to smash this. I think this passing offense is going to be better than it had been previously. Casey Thompson is an upgrade as a passer over Adrian Martinez. They bring in offensive coordinator Mike Whipple from Pitt, who throws the ball more than maybe what they had in the past. I think this is a smash line. This is my favorite play of the week.
It would not be a show without Colin talking about Trey Palmer. I believe the over-under for the season, we'll see if we can get Prize Picks to play that on how many times Colin talks about Trey Palmer. Over-under 50.
Insider info, take the over.
All right. Oh, there you go. It's easy money, guys. If you use our C2C deposit there, the SEC is coming for Colin. All right, Chris, let's come over to you. What plays do you like today?
So the first one I have, the line has moved a substantial amount since we wrote this, but I still want to talk about it. Ryan Helinski, the quarterback at Northwestern, opened at 185.5. Everywhere else, Underdog, DraftKings, FanDuel, had him at 157.5. This is one of the key reasons that you need to get on lines early. A 30-yard difference for a player who isn't projected to go over 160 is massive. I posted this in our Discord the second that it dropped. I posted it on Twitter the second that it dropped. I tried to get the word out as much as possible about this. And this is why early lines are so important. We saw the same thing with Mike Wright that Colin just talked about. 50 yards of value. Here, 30 yards of value. It's crazy to me that you have to hop on these lines immediately before they get bet up or bet down. As we see here, it's now 157.5. I still think you could play it if you want to, but the 185 was just a crushing number. The second one that I like is Tyron Smith, the wide receiver at UTEP, over 11 fantasy points. So Tyron Smith is actually was his third leading receiver last year. They lost their top two options. Jacob Cowing transferred to Arizona, and Justin Garrett actually took a place in the football athletic department. They think that he can be really interesting head coach or position coach in the next couple of years. Interesting guy, really, really smart. But Tyron Smith is the incumbent, and he's the true wide receiver one here for an offense that I think will pass a pretty good amount. Again, we talked about this matchup on defense. He's going to be covered probably by corner Deshaun Gaddy, and I think he's much better than Gaddy. I think 11 points, there's a couple different ways for him to get there. Receptions he's probably going to have 5 receptions, maybe 6. I do think he's going to have a good chunk of yards. He's a pretty explosive downfield threat. He averaged over 15 yards per catch last season. So this is a guy who I like that fantasy points more than I like the yardage and more than I like the receptions, because I think that he's going to be high usage, but I'm not quite sure what it looks like. I just like going the fantasy points route on a lot of these guys that I think are high usage players. Finally, and I also talked about this one earlier in my starts, I like Zion Bowens to go over 11.5. The Hawaii receiver is the true wide receiver one there as well. I think there's, like Tyron Smith, I think there's a couple different ways that he can get there. One of the ways he can get there is a touchdown. I think that he is, he's a pretty big bodied guy. And I think that, when you have the full PPR on Prize Picks that you have, Bowens becomes a more interesting player because he is going to be peppered with targets. He's only the real one that I like there with returning experience. They have Jonah Panogan. They have, TMA, who is, I think will operate out of the slot. But yeah, this is a really good target, the same way Tyron Smith is a good target, because they are clear alphas in offenses that want to pass the ball against poor secondaries.
Yeah, thank you there for Chris. And Chris just highlighted, kind of as a throw-in statement there. Prize Picks, they do fantasy score as an option, and it is full PPR. So you can get a lot of value on some of these receiving backs and wide receivers, especially early in the season where maybe we're not quite sure, what target distribution is going to look like. But if a guy's going to get 6, 7, 8 targets, you got to feel pretty good in full PPR about them getting over 11, 10 or 11 fantasy points per game, as we talked about with Trey Palmer. And now with Bowens there as well. Matt, let's come over to you. It wouldn't be a show without a Raymond Davis shout out.
Of course not. I was hoping you'd come to me for start sit so I could throw out Grant Wells, because I can't be wrong this week since he's not, or I guess I would be wrong since he's not playing. I am all in on Raymond this year. I think he's going to have a bounce back year, even though Jarek disagrees, and that's all right. Me and Jarek will have words after the show. His yards here were sitting at 72.5. I mean, he only was able to unfortunately play in 3 games last year before he got injured, but he went over that in 2 of those games. Hawaii was 71st last year in rush defense, and as Moxley and Colin have both talked about earlier on the show, when we were talking about how bad Hawaii is going to be, I'll just remind you guys again, Hawaii's bad. They were the 71st worst team against the rush, and that was also because most teams were passing all over them as well. So to be that bad against the rush means you're really, really bad against the rush. They gave up an average of 156.3 yards a game. You may think, as Moxley and Chris both just said, well, it's Hawaii. Vanderbilt's probably going to pass all over them. That's why they're on the Mike Wright lines, right? Clark Lee last year with a bad Vanderbilt team still ran the ball 60% of the time in neutral situations, which leads me to believe he's still going to run the ball a lot this year with bad running backs last year. Whether we think Raymond Davis is an NFL player or not, he's shown in a year and a half at Temple and then even in his first couple games last year that he's a decent running back. I expect him to easily go over this line today. My next one is Chase Brown. I won't lie, I'm a little bit nervous about this one. It's set at 101.5 rush yards. I am taking the over. They've got the backup, which you guys are about to hear about, so I don't want to completely give him away yet. We'll have Corey talk about him in a minute. But Wyoming is also another team that's really bad against the rush. 98th last year, allowed 180.6 yards a game. The big issue with Chase Brown is he is very boom bust. If you go look at his stats, every time he plays, it's like 40 yards, 50 yards, 200 yards, 50 yards, 70 yards, 190 yards. So this could be easily one of his 70-yard games, or it could be like his 200-yard game. I have a feeling that Illinois is going to win this game, and so I think that they're eventually going to just start relying on the run when they get later in the game to kind of close it out, which is where I think Chase Brown comes in and eventually takes over this line. This last one, I almost would bet nobody played this one, and it was a smash for me. Now Colin knows that I like this guy. I've heard him talk about it on Campus Life. I made a trade for him last year. That's Johnny Ford, the running back out of FAU. His fantasy points are sitting at 16.5, and that sounds like a lot, except for the fact that as Mox and Jared and Austin just reiterated, it's a full PPR, right? For anybody, he's a good receiving back. Last year, he didn't get a ton of receptions. It was like 3, 5, 5, 3, but he was constantly targeted. He was getting over 30 yards in most of those games, but add in the fact that he's consistently getting over 80 rushing yards in all of those games as well. They're going up against Charlotte. I believe this is the highest point total of the weekend. This should likely be a very high scoring game. And he should get, as long as he gets a touchdown, he's going to put you over this because he's going to get close to 100 rushing yards. If he gets you 30 or 40 receiving yards, you're already up at 13, 14 points. All you need is a touchdown for him to go a little over here or there, and I think he smashes that. I'm all in on Johnny Ford anyway as a player. I think he's a really good fantasy player. I was trying to find out how many points he averaged last year, but week 1 Fantrax is down. Unfortunately, it has not been working. So I don't have the exact points of what he did every single week, but just based on his stats, he should easily go over this against a Charlotte team that I expect to be a high-scoring affair tonight.
All right, Jared, you're targeting the late game here. Bring us home on some of the lines that you like this week.
I'll do so in a second. I'm trying to find Johnny Ford's performance last year, and unfortunately, I don't have his stats either.
I can stall real quick with the bonus play for the week.
No, it's all good. I'll hit mine real quick.
Okay.
So two themes you'll see with mine is that just like Mox reiterated earlier, hitting these lines early gets you value. And I'm not sure which lines Matt put on the graphics, whether it's what I got these at or if it is what they are now. But there is a difference, and I'll make sure to highlight that out. All right, so what I got them at, so I'll definitely make sure to talk about who. Also, great picture of me, Matt. Thanks.
You were smiling. You were having a good day. We were talking about Georgia winning the national championship.
Yeah, I said Georgia must have won the Natty that
day. They
won.
won. Yeah, it was us talking on the draft coverage. You were laughing really hard. I was like, that's a great picture. He's very happy.
No, I agree. And then the other thing you'll see with my picks here is that I'm going to be out very, very late tonight because all 3 of these are in the Hawaii Vanderbilt game. Anyway, Dedrick Parson, over 10 fantasy points. A lot of people might question this because you got the Timmy Chang offense coming into town at Hawaii. That is a very pass-heavy offense. Well, 2 things. First of all, Dedrick Parson is like the only returning productive player from Hawaii last year. In addition, he is a very, very good pass catching back. He already, as the backup pass catching option last year, had 28 receptions behind Calvin Turner. I have been told that there's a good chance he could play a Calvin Turner like role this year, in which case he could hit half of his goal right here just from the PPR fantasy points. And like we said earlier, if he finds a touchdown in any way, shape, or form during this game, he's going to go way over these 10 fantasy points. He is currently up to 12. I still like it over 12. But like I said earlier, getting these lines early means I get those extra 2 points of just kind of some wiggle room right there. Next up, I'm going with what Colin said earlier with Mike Wright. I got him at 185.5 passing yards. He is up to 200.5 passing yards. Again, still like that. It's a terrible, terrible Hawaii defense. Again, I'm not in love with Mike Wright as a passer. Definitely love him way more as a rusher. But again, this team is like Hawaii's defense is just atrocious in terms of who they're bringing back. I still think he can pretty easily clear 200 yards in this game. Heck, he could go for 300 as far as I'm concerned. And then the last one I have here is Zion Bowens. Chris Moxley went with the fantasy points earlier. I'm going with the receptions here. Again, Chris said it earlier. He is the clear number one wide receiver on this team. And if he's the clear number one wide receiver in a pass-heavy system, he's hitting over 3 receptions. He's currently up to 4 on Prize Picks as of this morning. I still like him at 4, but once again, I got him earlier. I get some more wiggle room here.
I like all those. Thank you, gentlemen. I dropped all of my plays in the Discord. You can find all of those over there. And just one bonus play if you're looking for something really fun to do this week, guys. There are 5 interception totals up on there. I'm infamous for my interception plays. I've hit many of them in the past. All of the lines are at half an interception, and all the quarterbacks that they list almost every single week stink. So, like, they almost all always hit this. This week, Ryan Helinski, half an interception, and Kosi Perry, half an interception. Chris Reynolds, half an interception. Austin Ani, half an interception, and Mike Wright. I could see all of those guys throwing an interception. I would be tempted to play all 5 in a flex play, meaning they don't all have to hit for you to win some money. I bet I could guarantee at least 3 of them do, and I feel pretty good that at least 4 of them will. So that's a fun play for anybody that wants to play a little fast and loose with their money this week. All right,
I'm not
guys,
gonna lie, I might do it.
Yeah, it's fine. I might have to do that. All right, guys, we have Corey Pereira, our head devy guy, put together a little video just looking at some of the devy guys to be on the lookout for this week for anybody that maybe isn't quite as deep down the rabbit hole as some of us are. So toss it over to Corey Pereira with today's devy sesh.
What is going on, everybody? Corey Pereira here from the Campus Canton Devy team, and the moment we've finally been waiting for is here. It's week 0, and that means Devy and C2C season is here. Now, there isn't a huge slate of games this weekend. Most of them are going to come from the G5, but I did just want to highlight a few players that I'm going to be watching this weekend. Starting over at North Carolina and their newly appointed quarterback one in Drake May. He's going to have his first start in a nice cushy matchup against Florida A&M. He's going to have the opportunity to really settle in nicely, kind of gain confidence going into the season. He's a prospect a lot of us have been excited to see. Now that he's been tapped as a starter, really going to be able to see how he can function in this offense. I'm also going to be watching out to see how these freshmen play, especially at running back with Bruce Brooks now getting injured. Omarion Hampton and George Pettaway have gotten some good buzz this spring. If everything breaks right, it's possible we could be looking at the new Javonte Williams and Michael Carter of this backfield. Possible, I don't know, maybe some lofty aspirations there, but maybe in their wheelhouse. Another Power 5 team that's going to play this weekend is Florida State. Now, there's not a ton here that I'm watching, but I did want to mention someone I'm keeping some eyes on in running back Trey Benson. Now, Trayshawn Ward is listed as a starter there. He's a smaller back at like 5'10", sub 200 pounds. Benson, 6'1", 215 pounds, has that great size, has received a ton of buzz this offseason. He's a former Oregon commit, redshirted as a freshman in 2020. Only has 6 carries last year, so he's a guy we haven't seen a lot of. But the buzz was loud enough that maybe it's worth keeping an eye on, someone to maybe throw on your watch list. The biggest game of this weekend is probably going to be our only Power 5 matchup in Northwestern versus Nebraska. Now, starting with Northwestern, I'm really interested to see how these running backs shake out. Cam Porter was a really interesting guy as a freshman, ran for over 300 yards over the last 3 games of his freshman season. Looked like he was going to be the starter going into this year, but an injury stole his whole year, which allowed another running back over there by the name of Evan Hall, I think he's going to be a senior this year, to have a pretty decent season, something like 1,200 all-purpose yards. So now that Porter has returned to health, I'm kind of interested to see how this backfield is going to shake out and how healthy he is and if he's going to claim a big stake of this backfield. On the Nebraska side, I'm looking at the wide receiver room, and I'm looking at a former LSU transfer in Trey Palmer. High-end recruit who's kind of buried on LSU's depth chart. Very fast. Play speed kind of jumps off the screen. He's been making a lot of waves since transferring to Nebraska. They also bring in former Texas quarterback Casey Thompson, who probably isn't a Devy asset, but is a more than serviceable college quarterback. This was a guy who was a part of Xavier Worthy's breakout last year. So I'm excited to see what these two guys can do in this offense. I did just want to give a shout out to a couple lower end guys here. Illinois is going to play this weekend. The running back Chase Brown, who recently made the freak list. Very run heavy scheme over there. He could be one of those sneaky climbers who kind of pops in the 3rd or 4th round if we're lucky in the draft. Also, if you have your waivers open here, C2C, I'd poke around and maybe look for the backup running back there by the name of Josh McCray. He's a bigger back, about 235 pounds, 6 foot, I believe, who looked pretty good at times last year, moved really well for his size. Could be an interesting stash for when Brown moves on next year. I think he's only a sophomore this year, so a nice young piece to maybe put on your team and stash. Last but not least, I did just want to give a shout out to a guy, running back that I've been following closely. Matt Bruning has also been following pretty closely, and Ramon Davis. And I'm kind of interested to see if he can just, kickstart his comeback campaign this year. After a great freshman season at Temple, unfortunately, has lost the last 2 years to injury. So he's got a nice cushy matchup here against Hawaii. So let's see if he can get a season off on the right foot. But those are really the guys I'm kind of keeping tabs on. But mostly, guys, I'm really just excited to watch some football and enjoy all these games today. So I hope you guys are ready for some football.
All right, thank you, Corey. And again, like the graphic just said there, you can find Corey every week on Back to Devy with Mike Valerie, a new show on the Campus to Canton podcast feed. All right, guys, game picks. Usually we do 5 of these. This week we're only doing 3 because the games just kind of stink. I didn't feel like picking some of them. I'm sorry.
Stink. They're awesome.
I'm sorry. There were some games in good conscience that I could not put on here as games that were interesting enough to pick and have a conversation about. Let's go over to Ireland. The first game here today, Nebraska Northwestern. Most bizarre thing I've ever seen, that there's a conference game week 0 and it's in Ireland, but whatever. Go off. This could be. These are 2 teams I don't necessarily want to watch play each other, but first game of the season, so you bet your butt I'm going to be sitting there watching this whole thing. I'm taking Nebraska. I think this is a much improved Nebraska squad, and I think the line is like at 13 or 14 now or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised, or it's right around there. I bet they cover that. I bet they cover that. Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, I like Nebraska too. And I'm right there with you. I actually think, a little bonus play here. If you want to take Nebraska -7 first half, I think that's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting line. But I do think the Cornhuskers win this game pretty easily. They're just a much better team than Northwestern.
First of all, Austin, how dare you say that this is the first game of the season when our favorite Hilltoppers will be playing at noon, and these guys don't start until 12:30.
Oh, I thought they were the first game at 12:30. That's my bad.
No. Shame on you. Anyway, I'm easily taking Nebraska here. Nebraska went 1-8 in 1-score games last year, most of which were in conference. The one conference team that Nebraska absolutely annihilated 56-7, Northwestern. I'm gonna go with Nebraska here.
Colin?
Yeah, I'm also going to take Nebraska here. I know Northwestern, they have the whole thing where in the even years they're supposed to be good, and this is an even year, but I think they break the trend here. I don't think Northwestern's very good. Nebraska is an improved team. I think this is pretty easy.
Yeah, same. I mean, Nebraska throttled Northwestern last year. I don't think that's going to change much this year. I was really hoping Felix wasn't still in the comments watching the show, because I do have to tout Casey Thompson a little bit. I mean, as much as Adrian Martinez is great for us on the CFF side of things with the points he puts up, Casey Thompson is definitely the safer quarterback. I don't think he's going to turn the ball over as much. I think Nebraska's going to win pretty easily here.
Yeah, Felix commented, just for everybody not watching, Austin just admitted that Casey Thompson is good. I'm giving credit to the coaching staff they brought in, not to Casey Thompson. So chalk one up for me. Still Austin 1, Felix 0 there. North Texas, yes.
Does Scott Frost make it home as the head coach of Nebraska if they lose this game?
I was on a show last night. We talked about it.
He's going to get Lane Kiffin left in
but
gone.
There are worse places to be
That's
left
true.
though if you've just been fired than Ireland.
Fair.
I'm sure he can enjoy himself there for a few days. Yeah.
By the way, I do find it interesting. You kind of tease about it, Austin, about the idea of like them playing more games in the UK. Like the UK market for college football is growing more and more each year. I know we have several in our Discord that are from the UK. I get people who reach out to me all the time. They're like, hey, like I'm over here in the UK. We're like all still trying to learn about this and everything. I think it's great. I would love for college football to become more of a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah, it is really, really interesting. And they play there again next year as well, I believe. So this is a multi-year plan as far as I know. North Texas, UTEP. We talked a lot about this quarterback situation earlier. I'm going to take North Texas still. I still think, like Chris said, they're going to run the ball a lot. They're going to successfully run that ball, and it's going to end up with the UNT victory here.
Last year, I was riding the Miners. They're one of my favorite teams. Yeah, it picks up, but I'm with the Mean Green this week. I think that they're just a little bit better team. Despite this game being in the Sun Bowl, I'm still taking the Fighting Austin Aunies.
North Texas is going to be very one-dimensional. They've made that quite clear by starting One at starting quarterback. Oh, thanks for spoiling my pick here, Austin. Yeah, I'm going with the Mean Green. I don't think that UTEP is going to be one of those teams that could take advantage of that one-dimensional fact. Again, UNT's offensive line is definitely one of the better ones in the entirety of the group of five. And like I said, I don't think UTEP is the one that could take advantage of that. So I'm going to go with the Mean Green here.
Colin?
Picks up, baby. We're going with the Miners again this year. They were our team last year, Chris. I don't know. You're off the bandwagon. I'm kind of upset about this. Look, this game is a 1.5 point spread. Vegas expects this game to be close. UTEP 34th in Bill Connolly's returning production. UNT was 21st, but they were only 3 percentage points higher. So it's not like there's a huge disparity here. UNT does lose University of North Texas does lose the Murphy brothers. And this offseason, they transferred out, both heading over to UCLA. They combined for 16 total sacks last year. I think this defense is going to take a little bit of a step back. Austin Aune, we talked about it, very bad, less than 2,000 yards passing, 9 touchdowns, 9 interceptions last year. UTEP was 40th in rush yards allowed last year, 26th in defensive drive efficiency, so value of a drive for a defense, and 38th in touchdown rate, rate at which the team scores a touchdown on your defense. All this is coming from Football Outsiders. UTEP's defense isn't that bad. I think their offense is going to be better. Give me the Miners.
Damn, Colin was right. He is more than just a pretty face. Look at those
10 minute breakdown on UNT UTEP is not what we really needed this morning.
Damn,
I'm going
UNT.
I'm going UNT too. I'm actually hoping that what some of the things Colin said is true, and that UTEP is winning this game, and whoever Austin is gets pulled out. We see Grant Gunnell coming and just firing live bullets, and we get Grant Gunnell leading this offense to a win. But I'm excited for this game. Should be a good one.
Hashtag Matt's guy, Grant Gunnell. Last game we're picking here, guys, this Vandy Hawaii game. I think Hawaii covers. I do. I think this first game in the Timmy Chang era in Hawaii, it's a 9 or 9.5 point line at this point. I think Hawaii covers that, and I think this game is close. And if I was tempted, I would maybe sprinkle just a little bit on the money line for fun for Hawaii. I think this new era, I think they might surprise a little bit here. It's not like let's not pretend like Vanderbilt, like they're hardened by the SEC. Like, no, they're softened because that hammer just hits them week in, week out, and they provide little to no resistance. Sorry, Chris, don't roll your eyes at me.
No, I'm going Vanderbilt too. And, if you're in the Discord, you know that we're riding the Commodores -6.5. I think they cover that number. So go Doors.
But the 9 is too much.
I am not touching that number. No.
Yeah.
All my doubt about Vanderbilt in this game went out the door when I learned that they've been there for a week. So any kind of jet lag is gone. The only thing I have to worry about now is them enjoying their vacation a little too much. But even so, I'm riding with Vanderbilt here. Go SEC.
Yeah, this is easy. Just like the Commodores song, this is easy. Vanderbilt. They're just a better team.
Is that I do not get that reference.
I'm missing. You're missing
none of
that
those
reference,
do.
Colin.
Colin, you just ruined
after
it.
the show.
Nobody's a fan of the Commodores?
You were the rock star of this segment, going so deep into UTEP in North Texas, and then
Colin, we all know that Colin Googled Commodores looking for Vanderbilt stuff and found that instead and was very confused for about 5 minutes.
Yes. I am also taking
no comment on that. No comment.
The Fighting Raymond Davises to pull off the win here. I'm going with Vanderbilt.
All right, guys, that is our show for this week. Again, we will be 2 hours. We'll be starting at 10 a.m. next week, so tune in for that. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to keep this thing rocking every week this season. Good luck to everybody in their fantasy leagues if they're playing this week, their prize picks, whatever bets they've got laid, and just enjoy week 0 of college football.